In this video, we will celebrate Black History Month in two ways. First, we will examine the topic of what level of knowledge ancient Romans had about the continent of Africa and its people, as well as learn more about ancient Romans who had African ancestry. But then, most importantly, we will explore the contributions of Black Americans to the study of Greek and Latin language and classical studies. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder wrote, quoting an earlier Greek proverb, Semper aliquid novi Africam ad ferre, popularly translated, out of Africa there is always something new. While his original meaning may have been that Africa seemed to the ancient Greeks and Romans a marvelous and mysterious place, we know today that, in fact, all of us ultimately come from Africa. The continent of Africa, being the ancestral home of all humans, is an ethnically diverse place. The ancient Romans would eventually come to control that part of North Africa that borders the Mediterranean Sea, having conquered the Carthaginians, who were themselves Phoenician invaders who supplanted the indigenous Berber people who previously ruled the area. Despite conducting a few exploratory missions into sub-Saharan Africa, the vast majority of that continent, apart from those provinces on the Mediterranean, would remain unknown to the Romans. The Latin term for dark-skinned sub-Saharan peoples was Aethiopes, related to the word Ethiopia. They appear in the Cambridge Latin course only in the account of the crocodile hunt of stage 19 of Unit 2. The celebrated Roman playwright Publius Terentius Afer, known as Terence, bears the cognomen Afer, meaning African. He seems to have been of North African descent, possibly of the indigenous Berber people. He was originally brought to Rome as a slave, but having impressed his master through his learning, he was set free and would go on to write many plays which would be a strong influence on Shakespeare himself. Quotes from Terence worth knowing are, Homo sum, humani nihil a me alienum puto. I am human, and I think nothing human is alien to me. Also, quote homines tot sententiae. There are as many opinions as there are people. Another Roman of African ancestry worth knowing about is St. Augustine of Hippo. Like Terence, he was Berber by ethnicity. He was a Christian bishop who lived near the end of the Roman Empire in the West and was the most prolific writer of theological works and biblical commentaries of his day. A quote of his worth knowing about touches on his philosophical speculations on the nature of time itself. Quid est ergo tempus? Si nemo ex me quaerat scio? Si quaerenti explicari velum nescio. What then is time? If no one asks me, I know what it is. If I wish to explain it to him who asks, I do not know. Black History Month. Black History Month, observed in February, celebrates the substantial contribution Black Americans have made in the history of America, starting from the colonial period onward. It is impossible to talk about these achievements without first addressing the topic of slavery. It has sometimes been fashionable to draw a distinction between the institution of slavery in ancient Rome and that institution of slavery that existed in the Americas and Europe following the discovery of those new lands. It has been said that since slavery in the classical world was not based on race, as it would later be, that it was somehow not as repugnant. This idea needs to be forcefully denied. any time or place that has permitted one human to own another human as property has violated the basic dignity of the human person. The vast majority of people of African origin in the Americas are the descendants of people brought against their will, having been captured and sold into slavery from areas in West Africa. They suffered unspeakable humiliations and abuse. After the institution of slavery was ended, they would then continue to the current day to experience injustice through segregation and a denial of equal treatment. We will now celebrate the contributions of Black Americans to the study of classics. What will here follow is by no means a complete list of all the Black Americans who have distinguished themselves in the study of Greek and Latin language, history, and culture, but it will be an attempt to highlight some of those accomplishments. Phillis Wheatley was the first African American author of a book of published poetry. She was born in West Africa and brought to the American colonies as a slave. The Wheatley family of Boston, who enslaved her, allowed her to cultivate self-study, which included Greek and Latin to such a degree that as a child she was fluently reading those languages. She was emancipated after the publication of her book of poetry. Paul Robeson was a noted athlete, actor, writer, singer, and civil rights activist. But he studied Latin for 4 years in high school and then majored in classical studies at Rutgers, tutoring others in Latin to help put himself through law school. Lucy Craft Laney was an educator and civil rights activist. By the age of 12, she had learned enough Latin to read Caesar's Gallic Wars. She would eventually found and be principal for 50 years at the Haynes Normal and Industrial Institute in Augusta, Georgia, where Latin was required study. Then Governor Jimmy Carter honored her by having her portrait placed in the Georgia State House in 1974. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first African American to earn a PhD from Harvard and was a co-founder of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. But he also studied Latin and Greek in high school and continued in classical studies in college, eventually teaching Latin and Greek at Wilberforce University in Ohio. Helen Maria Chestnut earned an M.A. in Classics from Columbia University. She was one of the co-authors of a popular and successful Latin textbook, The Road to Latin. And while teaching Latin at Central High School in Cleveland, Ohio, she taught Langston Hughes, who would go on to become a poet, novelist, social activist, and leader of the Harlem Renaissance. The distinguished novelist Toni Morrison won the Pulitzer Prize and the Nobel Prize for Literature. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Barack Obama in 2012. And guess what? She studied Latin for 4 years while in high school. Let us conclude with a verse of scripture quoted by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his famous I Have a Dream speech.
No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
St. Jerome's translation of the Hebrew original. Et revelabitur quasi aqua judicium, et justitia quasi torrens fortis.